Welcome to That's Good Parenting. I'm your host, Dori Durbin, children's book author, illustrator, and coach. And parents, if you ever felt at a loss for helping your teen handle anxiety or even just stand up for themselves, well, today's episode is definitely for you. I'm joined by Becky Funk, a teen confidence and anxiety coach who specializes in helping young people find their voice and build strong self-advocacy skills. Becky, I would love for you to talk a little bit more about yourself and share about your work.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dory, for having me on. I'm so happy to be here. I am a mom of two young adults and a wife and a former high school teacher. And I found myself coaching teens because my son went through a period where he was really sick and I quit my job and I stayed home with him. And once he was doing better, what do I wanna be when I grow up? Now that I'm in my 40s, I didn't wanna go back to teaching. So much had changed in the classroom since I was out, and a friend of mine mentioned, "Coaching, you should coach," because I kind of naturally was already doing it, and it just opened up a whole new world to me, and I am so thrilled to be doing this job right now and being able to help teens who were just like me at their age find their voice so much quicker than I did and walk into adulthood more confident, and strong and ready to face the world instead of stumbling through it for 20 years like I did.
I think, in that respect, a lot of us can totally relate because the parallels of our experiences are similar as teens, but we each have like a different, I don't want to say a hang up, but we have different
Mhm.
anxieties about
Yeah.
different things. And I know sometimes, like when anxiety is a huge issue in a teen's life, it's not the confidence that they lose just in themselves, but it like shows up in school, it shows up at
Mhm.
home, everywhere that they are. So, what do you wish that more parents understood about teens and anxiety in general?
Oh gosh, that is a great question. I wish they understood, like, it's a real thing. They can't just get over it, And I have parents on both ends of the spectrums who are like very serious about it, and others that, it's you just stop worrying. It's what I was told growing up. I think everybody, when growing up in the 80s and 90s was just get thicker skin, stop wearing your heart on your sleeve, and I can't do that. So a lot of it comes down to just kind of respecting where they are. And there was a study that actually just came out in July at the University of Georgia that talked about how your parenting style can actually shape your child's anxiety. And now, every parent listening, don't freak out and have the guilt because I know we're all Googling late at night, like, did I cause my teens anxiety? And it's not a I don't want you to be down. I was that person. I was that person. So what they found was if you tend to have a more cold, controlling parenting style that's surrounded with like guilt and shame, then your kid's going to have a lot more anxiety. And I think that kind of makes sense, right? Because when you're controlling, your teen isn't, or your child isn't realizing like, I can't make decisions for my own because the world is too scary, right? I need somebody else to do it for me, or I'm not okay being who I am because I'm supposed to be this person, and the guilt and the shame just kind of gets at us. They found that parents that have a more warm, affectionate, accepting parenting style tend to produce teens who have, or who can, or more resilient, can kind of handle what life throws at them a little bit more. And all of that to say, but what happened in the past can change, doesn't mean that has to be what happens in the future. Because I was that parent who was a little controlling. I'm a perfectionist. I like to control things, and you can't control toddlers no matter how hard you try, you know? It was tough, it was tough. So, I got to a point where I realized on my own that this wasn't working for my kids, and so I had to make some changes through that. And so that study, I think we all kinda know, but you can change that, and I think then what is most important for any parent of any teen to take away, but especially those that are anxious, that your relationship with your teen should always be the utmost concern. Like, you wanna discipline, I know, like, there's a fine line between gentle parenting and, you have to find that with your kid, and it's gonna be different with your first kid and your second kid and your third kid. But protect that relationship at all costs, and through that is just a lot of open communication. "Hey, I see you're really struggling. What's going on?" And quite honestly, what they tell you, you're gonna be like, "Pfft, what? that's really what's bothering you? And, we have so much more life experience to know that this breakup that you just experienced is not the end of the world. But to this girl, this guy, it really is because they don't know any different other than this was my person and now they're not.
You just said so many things I want to go back to.
I talk so much. I'm sorry.
Well, great things. I think the big thing that popped into my head when you were talking was so many of us think that when we start being parents, that we have to stay that same path as our kids get older.
Yes.
And I'm one like you, like I didn't like where I was at in the toddler years. I felt so stressed and so overwhelmed.
Mhm.
And then as they got older, I was like taking different perspective and seeing different things and like, oh, well, I don't have to do that. And I think so many times we just get in that headset of like, this is how I was raised, this is how it's got to go. And then that becomes, they get to be teens and you're fighting, literally fighting to have a relationship.
Yeah.
And on the other side of that, having kids who are in their 20s now, I'm like, oh man, I'm so glad I slowed things down and like figured things out before that got out of hand and we didn't talk to each other.
Right.
So that's like you put me in like the flash forward and flash back right away. But true. And like what you said about the boyfriend situation or their first crush, their first love, to us, we've had four or whatever it is. And to them, it's the first time. Everything is the first time all the way through.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that just puts things in a totally different perspective. Oh, I love it. I love it. Great thing. So one thing that I think about too is you've actually taken all these observations that you've created over time with your own kids and with your clients, because you've had
Mhm.
multiple clients, I know for sure. I forget how many hours, 100 plus hours,
Yeah, we're
like
up
the
there.
hundreds of hours.
Yes.
And you've developed systems that you use with them.
Mhm.
So can you talk a little bit about that? Because maybe parents don't even realize that there's a path that they can follow.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, I'm not setting the world on fire with anything that's not unknown, but what I do with my teens when they come to me for help is exactly what I walk through. It's first having to take a look at who I am and realize what are my triggers? What are like honestly thinking, what are my triggers? What's my personality? I years ago got into the Enneagram. Have you heard of that at all?
Yes.
And I found out I was an Enneagram 1 and a perfectionist, and all of a sudden my entire world made sense, right? So I use that with my teens to help them understand where their anxiety comes from. Because if you're an Enneagram 9, the people pleaser, your anxiety is different than the Enneagram 1, the perfectionist, or the Enneagram 6, the overthinker, like it all kind of, so that helps us understand like one, there are so many other people out there who think and act exactly as you do. You are not broken. You're not broken. We just have to figure out how to harness all of this energy in a more positive way. So that's part of that awareness is figuring out what their personality is and kind of where they fall in that range. And then helping them build up like self-esteem and self-confidence of like, you are worthy of taking up this space. So then we move into building resiliency. So a lot of times by the times I get these kids, they've been struggling for a while, and their nervous system is a little frayed. So when my son was sick and my anxiety was at its worst, my counselor introduced me to vagus nerve. This was brand new to me at the
Or talk
time.
about that. Talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So the vagus nerve is this bunch of nerves that run from our brain to our gut. And 80% of the communication goes actually from our gut to our brain. And so it's sending all these signals. And when you're stressed, it's your vagus nerve that kicks on, and there's a vagus brake. You can think of it like a car brake, where it slows down your physical responses. So where your heart rate starts to increase and you start breathing shallow and your brain starts spinning and you can't think straight, and you're getting sweaty, the vagus brake comes on and it was like, whoa, let's slow all of this down so that your prefrontal cortex, which in teens is still developing, has a chance to kick on and think reasonably about the situation. And over time, when you're constantly stressed, I tell kids it's like taking your fingernail and scratching the back of your paw, back of your hand. Over time, like if I do it for like a couple seconds, like it's not going to do anything. But if I'm doing it for an hour straight, 2 hours straight, rubbing that same spot, eventually I'm going to break through the skin and it's going to hurt. And that's essentially what it's like for your nervous system when you're stressed all the time. You've it's kind of a little raw and it needs a little TLC. I tell them it's basically like physical therapy for your nervous system. So we're going to do some things to take care of yourself, and it's not going to be a quick fix. Like physical therapy can take weeks. Like this is something that's going to take time. And so the second part of the program then is building the resiliency, and it's help calming down their nervous system so that they can work on the resiliency and realize the world is a safe place. It's just that I have made it in my head an unsafe place. So we're calming down their nervous system, I'm pushing them to do some things that are a little out of their comfort zone to kind of build that faith in themselves. And then the last part of it is advocacy, because I think we all need to learn how to ask for our needs, to speak up for what we want. And I always tell my parents, but they always relate to when you ask your kid to clean their bedroom and they yell or scream or roll their eyes and stomp their feet, and it's so unfair. What I help them do is, instead of reacting that way, calming down and responding and saying, I know it's important and I'll get to it, but I am in the middle of something. Can I do it later? And every parent's like, oh, yeah, I'm okay with that. That's what I want, you know? So that process that I walk them through helps take them, through an understanding and calming their nervous system and building their resiliency so that they can use their voice to stand up for themselves and just say, yeah, I'm not a bad person. I need a little bit of time.
Yeah. So, okay, go back to the vagus nerve.
Okay, sure.
Well, if that is raw, let's say, as you
Yes.
then some of the smallest things are going to cause the biggest reactions, right?
Exactly. Exactly. So asking them to clean their room, which you don't think is a big deal, is huge because they can't handle it. They can't handle it. Like a change of plans, like, oh, we're gonna go to grandma's for dinner tonight. Oh, well, now, their world's falling apart because they were planning on doing XYZ. Like it does. It's huge.
Okay, so that is a reaction from a teen that is like visible.
Mm,
It's something that is more like explosive or reactive.
right.
Could you ask a different teen that same question and they have like a totally different reaction and still have, they're still under the same amount of stress? Like what
Hmm.
would that look like for another teen that may not visibly react?
It's gonna be the exact opposite. They'll shut down. They just shut down. They tend to be more of the people pleasers, who don't wanna cause any conflict. They don't wanna cause any. You might see some tears. You could see them fighting back the tears, but they may even just hide that, and be like, "Okay, fine. I'll go clean my room," and close their door and just break down. These are the teens who they're not lazy. They look lazy, but they're not. They're overwhelmed. Like they just cannot handle anything else before they break.
Yeah, there's probably a lot of parents that would identify with the reactive,
Yeah.
but maybe fewer ones that would, identify their teen as having anxiety in the other extreme.
Yeah.
And so then as a parent, how do I know if my teen is overwhelmed and at this point? So I know the extremes, either I'm assuming there's some in the middle too. So what should
Yeah.
I be looking for?
Yeah. What you look for always lazy, like always on their phone. I mean, everybody's doom scrolling nowadays, right?
Yeah.
How much time are they really spending on their phone? As moms, I think we often tend to like have that little check in our spirit, like something might be off, and ask them, just how. I think sometimes we get too quick to assume and not want to ask because we don't want to call, they're just going to roll their eyes anyway or whatever. And they might, but they need us asking and prying, and it's asking the right questions. It's not just, hey, are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. But I can see you're a little off. I can tell there's something that's going on right now. Do you want to talk about it? And they might not want to. They might need a little bit of time, but then it's here when you're ready, and just being that gentle presence for them to help pull them out of it. If they're sleeping a lot more than they used to be, if, getting out of bed is really hard when it wasn't before, if they're not eating a lot, a change in appetite is a big one. If they're having stomach aches and headaches and, the physical symptoms, that's another sign that, I mean, obviously you want to go to the doctor and get it checked out, make sure it's not something else, but it could be a physical representation of anxiety. I've heard so many times, I was just talking to a teen yesterday. It was like, my hand is shaking. Like, I feel like I'm anxious, but I'm fine. And a lot of times there's even a disconnect in teens and adults of my brain says I'm fine. I am not worrying about anything, but my body is sending so many signals that things aren't good right now. So it's looking for some of those physical symptoms too.
Yeah. Yeah. And so when parents bring their teens to you, is it because of the physical symptoms that they're bringing them, or is it more common issues that they're bringing them? Yeah.
It's a wide variety. I get it all. I've had, she's having stomach aches and issues, and doctor said it's just anxiety. Can you help? Yeah, absolutely. They come to me, sometimes they know it is. I had a girl who couldn't look me in the eye the first time I met her. Her anxiety was so bad. She's shaking, she's not talking to me. And by the time, I would like to say I completely was this, but I give her all the credit. But by the end, she was the lead in her school's play. It was a huge change. I like to say that one. But yeah, they come to me for a variety of different reasons. A lot of times it's I can tell there's something wrong and I don't know what it is. And she doesn't have anxiety. Can you help her with XYZ? And yeah, I can help her she won't get out of the house on time. She's missing assignments. She's fine. She doesn't have anxiety. And I was like, okay. She asked some questions. Okay, she's probably a little bit of a perfectionist. Like there's gonna be some underlying anxiety, and okay, yeah, there's some social anxiety that we're dealing with now, which is normal for many teens, but it's a wide variety that bring them. And I say that like I told my kid the other day, I was like, what I do, I'm always looking for anxiety. So I think always gonna be my first go-to is you're probably anxious. But you want to make sure it's any of those other things. It tends to be what I look for just because of what I do.
Yeah. And we had talked before the show a little bit that your own background kind of leads you to that looking for anxiety anyway. And I think being a mom tends to put you in that category too, just because you're always looking for, is my child okay? Are they functioning? Is
I
something like,
absolutely, yeah.
so let me ask you about this too. I know that a lot of kids, especially teens, as they're getting ready to approach college, as thinking about grades, there's a lot of anxiety on grades, exams, peer pressure. So again, I say there's some normalcy, like you said, but where do I start to get worried? And
Mhm.
some of your symptoms you mentioned, but when do I start to worry for my kids? And that,
Right. It's funny because the kids that I help are the ones that go under the radar, right? They're not causing problems in school. They have so much pressure on themselves to be perfect. Parents are like, I don't care if she gets a C, but the girl's like, I got a 92 and it wasn't an A plus, and I'm beating myself up. And so it's watching it's again, it comes back to communication, like talking to your kids. If your kid's beating herself up and wanting to redo a test because she got a 92, not understanding if she redoes the test, the best she can get is an 85. There's some problems. So a lot of times like they're going to go under the radar because they're going to mask it. They're going to cry quietly in their room, but how much time are they spending doing their homework? Do they let themselves have fun? I had a girl one time say, I want to go prom dress shopping this weekend, but I have so many things that I need to do. Am I allowed to go? Girl, yes, you're allowed to go prom dress shopping and have fun. Like, so, is your teen not taking time to have fun? Or is she going out with friends but feeling guilty, while she's out with them and coming home and, staying up until 2, 3 a.m. to then work on her to-do list, just to not feel guilty about taking time out. So those are like little things that you can definitely look for. Decisions is a big one. If you ask her, where do you want to go to dinner tonight? And she's like, always, I don't know. That's a red flag. It's like, yeah, she's easy and low key, and doesn't really care, but she's like telling you, I cannot make another decision. I don't have the bandwidth to think. I'm afraid of offending you. What if I make the wrong decision? That's a very silent cry for help.
wow, now you've got some parents really thinking right now. It's true. I think you're right. There's a difference between like, I can't choose between these two things. Do I want hamburgers or tacos?
Right.
But if you don't care at all, that's what you're saying. That's me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's either what I often see is they don't know what they like. The people pleasers are gonna lose themselves for the sake of everybody else, right? So they don't, I don't know what I like to eat. I don't know where I want to go. The perfectionists are always going to be afraid to make the wrong decision. And like, child, you cannot choose a wrong restaurant. Just choose. But that comes back to what you said about college, like there's so much pressure on, going to college and doing this. And a lot of times they just get paralyzed. What if even getting a job, I was working with a teen who wanted to get a job, and she was like, but what if it's the wrong one? And I
Mhm.
was like, then you quit and you find a different job. And you've learned you don't like working at that restaurant, like, yeah,
That would be a huge fear because then again, if they're perfectionists, they've made a mistake and it's in front of everybody and everyone
yeah,
knows. And yeah.
exactly.
So both my kids went to college and I think about this all the time. Like choosing the college was a huge decision.
Hmm.
Then once they get there, they all go through that shift of, I'm doing what all myself, that reality
Yeah.
shift. And then it moves into the grades and the social piece. And there's a lot there. So I see some real benefit, and I'm sure you would agree, of having this figured out before they make those kinds of
Hmm.
decisions.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So if I have a student who is maybe a sophomore or a junior who's starting to consider colleges, you have some advice for like how to even make the decision of whether to go or what college to go to.
I am I can always I'm always my answer is always like, you need to talk. You
Yeah.
just need to talk to them. Let them know what your expectations are. Like some kids are going to be so driven. My youngest was like, I am leaving. My oldest commutes to the local college. And my youngest was like, I need to go. I need out. And that was fine. They're very different. But we started those conversations early, like you said, and letting them know like there's more money in trades right now than in going to school. You don't have to go to college. Taking a gap year is a very healthy thing. There's no guilt in taking a gap year. So I think having the conversation and laying out all the possibilities is a great way to start. And then starting to prepare them ahead of time. Sophomore year is great of people skills. That's what I constantly see in the Facebook parenting groups of like kids off at college and they don't know how to be social with other people, how to have a roommate. And those are the types of things that I think cause probably the most stress when kids go away. So it's starting early of like, okay, yeah, we all have phones. They're not going anywhere. And you communicate on your phones, but let's also have everybody over and put your phones away. And how do we interact? How do we work through a difficulty with a friendship, instead of just like ghosting and the friendship's over? Like, how do we work through that? Small talk is huge. Like, let's figure out some small talk cues, some questions, that you can have in your back pocket. So when you're standing waiting for class to start at college, you feel much more comfortable saying, so what dorm do you live in? What's your major? What town did you grow up in? What's your favorite animal? Whatever. Instead of like, now you're out on your own. Like you said, all of these other things that you have to struggle with, like managing your own time and your classes are harder and everything. And now you have all this social stuff on top of it. That one we can take care of so easily, much earlier.
I love that idea of having those in your pocket. Do you practice them ahead of time then? Is that
Yeah, I have some. I have some right now. I'm like, okay, and I always make them do the research. Like, go on Google and find out what is some good small talk questions, and I have them pick some of their favorites. And we talk about the pros and cons of having some of those, some of the limitations, of what those questions that they've picked may have. Like, I can't even think of one right now, but I just was working with a client on it and, she found some limitations in what her favorite go-to question was going to be. So now she has a second question that kind of, when that one doesn't work, she's got other ones to go to. And it's getting them used to it now while they're in high school, putting themselves in positions where they're around different people, like clubs or whatever, and having to have that first conversation in person, IRL, and have to like say things helps break the ice and builds that confidence. So when they go off to college, they can make friends easier. I'm going to say making friends is, and that's another one. I think they go off to school thinking they're going to find their bestie within a week. And that's not how that happened. Like it's a slow process. And so setting that realistic expectation, you're speed dating for a few months to find your bestie. It's really what it comes down to. And eventually you'll find your people there, but it might take you a little while, and that's okay.
I love the idea of the mission small talk. and then shifting over to actually reaching and exploring the people there, I guess is what is running through my head. Because really, like, I think, and I'm just guessing, Becky, so correct me for sure if I'm wrong. But if you're already anxious going into school, you're going to stay in your little bubble that worked back home.
Yeah.
And that little bubble is broken. So then the little bubble becomes your room or your library or wherever your safe
Yeah.
haven is. And then you probably aren't going to talk to anybody.
No, yeah, you hear so often of like, my kid won't even leave her room. She's not going out because it's not a safe place. Our bodies, our brains are always working to keep us safe. And we tell it what is safe. And so when you have anxiety, you make your bubble very, very, very small so that it becomes your dorm room. And taking a step out of your dorm room can feel unsafe. So helping them peel back all the layers of that anxiety onion, so the world feels a little safer by the time they leave is really helpful.
Okay. So, I'm a children's book author and illustrator, and I love to help people make stories. So, one of the main reasons I do that is because I like the idea of generational change over a long time.
Yeah.
You are doing that as well. And so, one of the questions I have for you is what do you hope the long term impact of what you're doing will be for teens and their families?
Yeah. I think that I want them to live harmoniously together. Like, if we're talking the impact of short term while the teens are still at home, is I want them to have a healthy, thriving, fun relationship. Not the typical, it's always like, ooh, yeah, you got teenagers. Good luck with the next few years. But it doesn't have to be that way. I want you to enjoy that time and for it to be great before they fly the nest and leave the house. Long term, I want these teens to be like thriving adults that aren't going to spend their first 20 years. I always say 20 years because for me it was 20 years, of adulthood trying to get a hold on their anxiety, but to know that they are worthy of taking up space, that their voice is important. So whatever job they're in, they're sitting around the conference table, they feel confident speaking their mind. They know how to have those conversations and they aren't just getting looked over, but because the world needs their voice. So that's like the long legacy I think that I want to leave is like people that aren't afraid to go out into the world and spread love and kindness and, and stand up for themselves.
I love that. It's what every parent wishes they could give
Mm.
their child, as you said. Yeah. Okay. I hate to say it, but we're getting close to the end of our time. And so, one thing I definitely want to do before we go is to have you tell the listeners where to find you, what else they should be doing to be able to contact you.
Cool. Yeah. My on Instagram, my handle is Becky Funk Coaching. So come give me a follow, shoot me a DM and let me know where you found me because I love to talk to people in the DMs and just hear what's going on in their life. I also have a website, thebeckyfunk.com, and you can check out my resources. I have some free resources on there for parents, and my services are also listed in there. And there's a contact me page. You can contact me through the website too.
Awesome. Okay. Do you have time for one last question before we go?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. So, if a parent who is listening today remembers just one thing from this whole conversation, what do you hope that one thing is?
Communication is key. Communication is key. Talking to your teens. And I didn't say this, but what I want to add to that is letting them know where you failed, like letting them see you stumble and how you overcome it, because that's how they learn at this age is not so much by being told, but by watching. So communication and protecting the relationship at all costs is gonna bring that harmony to your household.
Love it. Great advice, Becky. You are amazing. I think people are silly not to reach out to you if they're struggling now. I really feel like it's so crucial. Like I said, having older kids, I am grateful for taking the time just to pause and figure it out a little bit better. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Awesome.
So, thank you again. And thank you for listening to That's Good Parenting.